My guest is a nationally touring comedian based out of Seattle. She has a series on Amazon titled 80 for 80 and is the host of the Dumb Pitches podcast. She's also the co-host of the Hug Life podcast with Seattle comedian Mike Coletta. I'm excited to welcome Monica Nevi.
Hey, thanks for
coming
having
on.
me. That was a great intro.
Yeah, I didn't check which mics I had on here, so I'm glad I got lucky with that one. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good. A little traffic, but I made it. Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were coming from Tacoma.
Yeah. It's not necessarily the smartest travel day I've ever done, but I was thinking about it in the car, and like I've been doing stand-up for almost 11 years. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning you do a lot of dumb stuff that like really doesn't make sense logistically. But now that, you know, as you go, you're like, oh, I can be a little pickier and smarter about the way I'm traveling. But post-pandemic, whatever, you know, post-pandemic, it's not over. You kind of had to go back to like taking stupid thing, or, you know, like I've just had
logistically.
Yeah. And
nightmare.
Like cancellations are still happening when I don't, like before you book out like 3 months, 6 months, you know, and you're confident by the time you get to that date that it's still going to happen. And now it's like, oh, I don't know. So I've had other cancellations. So then you just like kind of take stuff that you can take. And so I'm actually in Astoria, Oregon tonight. I'm
going to Chehalis. I should have just fucking like.
We should have figured this out.
We should have just done it from the car. Drop me off. I've never been to Chehalis, so I keep hearing interesting things about it.
Yeah. What are you doing there?
Just Joke Masters, like
okay.
show down there. I haven't done any of theirs, but I've heard that they're a lot of fun. And
I've had fun shows with them. But Chehalis is great, but it's like a smaller drunk kind of town, you know, like that's just what I've had. Really drunk audience members pretty much every time I've performed in Chehalis or Centralia. So you'll have fun. It'll be great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm good with stuff like that, as long as it's not like everything I'm doing.
Right.
Like then it just starts to wear.
You're like, I just performed for drunk people.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that was like sort of some of my questions for you, because you are based out of here, right? Like, weren't you kind of splitting your time in LA too? Or
yeah, I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years.
Okay.
And then kind of came back about a year before COVID. And didn't really live anywhere. I was kind of just on the road all the time. Mm-hmm. So I would go back to LA a little bit more then. But yeah, now since things changed, well, first of all, I'm engaged, so I have like a whole family and stuff here.
Yeah.
You can't be gone as much.
Were you just like crashing at your parents' place?
When I was in the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, if I was working up here, then I'd stay with them. Or, you know, depending on what work I was doing, you would just be in a hotel or whatever, some comics couch or something. But yeah, less of that now for sure.
What was the appeal of going to LA though? Like, what did you have a specific reason or?
I don't know if I had a specific reason other than like personally, I'd never lived anywhere else. Mm-hmm. I'm from the Washington State area and went to school in Seattle, and it does make you feel, and it's a little less like this now because you can kind of make your own career a little bit more than you could at that time. It just felt like that was the progression of what you were supposed to do, was either go to LA or New York. And it was a good experience for me, one, to just live somewhere else, but also to find out what I don't want to do, I guess, was like a lot of what I learned in LA.
Yeah. What were your like takeaways? Like, what did you think of LA? Would you do that over again, or would you do things differently?
I'm glad that I lived there for sure.
Mm-hmm. What part of LA were you in? Because that matters.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we first lived in Hollywood, like Central Hollywood, for about 3 months in a studio, me and Mike, which was, it's a pretty classic story, but if you don't have to do it, don't do it.
Yeah. I stayed in West Hollywood recently, or a couple of years ago. It's fucking
better than some other places too. So
for
that's
sure.
funny. But it's just busy there, you know?
Yeah,
like
that's it, just so much tourism.
So loud, like so loud. Even where then we moved to the Valley, which is like, we lived kind of in Van Nuys, which is more like families and stuff a little bit. than like in Hollywood. In Hollywood, nobody has a fucking job, like at all.
Really?
So yeah, it's just people at home during the day waiting to move their cars at certain times. You know, like that's all. Nobody was really doing anything. Just doing the same thing really was like hoping for something to happen. It's so industry heavy there. It's so much different than New York in that way. Like New York, there's just so many other people there that they're doing normal stuff, you know, just normal business people, whatever. Everybody's just doing their own thing. But in LA, it's like everybody's in the industry. They want to know what you do, if you can help them, you know, and everyone is like very much looking for celebrities and stuff around at all times. And New York's just not like that. I was in a bagel shop with another comic, and Aaliyah Shawkat was in there, who's like from Arrested Development. She's maybe on Arrested Development and then in Search Party and, you know, whatever. She has a reputable career. And we were both like, oh my God. Nobody's talking to her. Nobody's bothering her. She's just enjoying a bagel or whatever. And we just like kind of creepily sit close to her, you know, and then
this
like,
was New York.
Yeah. And then just talk about our shows loudly to see if she notices, you know, but no, and we didn't ever say anything to her. Cause I think, everyone there's just like normal doing their own thing. It's much different. Los Angeles just has this constant, like, well, what are you doing? What do you do? What's next for you?
How was the stand-up aspect of it? Was it just brutal?
Some shows are great. And honestly, there's plenty of like nice people that are comics. I just have a theory that being there makes you weird. So it doesn't have as much of like a community as some other scenes do.
Yeah. Roger Lazola, I was talking to him this week, and like super funny dude. If anybody listening isn't familiar, check him out. But he was just saying how like you can't even fucking hang out at shows. Like you have to pay as a comic. You have to pay to go hang out, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah, the Comedy Store is a little bit better about that, where you can hang out on the patio, but you can't really like go into the shows. And then like the Laugh Factory, you cannot go in there at all unless you pay. And it's like even if you tell them you're a comic, sometimes they'll let you in and sit, but you still have to do the 2-item minimum in fucking on Sunset in Hollywood. Like it's expensive, you know, like it's just, there's not a real like community. And so I think it makes everybody kind of weird, and you don't really like, it's hard for people to just relax and be themselves and support each other.
Did you get traction though? Like
I worked a lot. I did a lot of the shows there, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that I wasn't there all the time, as I was doing the road a lot. And so it was kind of like, hey, can I do this show? Cause I'm in town right now, which I can do from here. You know, like it's easier to get on shows when you don't live there. Yeah. Because if you're like, whenever I'm in town, you know, then they're like, we'll get you on eventually. But if you're like, I'm only here for this date, do you have spots? And they're like, yes, of course. So it just depends on what you want to do. And I think it's a good place. I like it, and I don't mind going back. You know, like I enjoy visiting. I just don't think, like I was there only maybe 3 weeks ago, and I was like, I couldn't live here again though. You know, like it's just, I could see myself living in New York and actually having my family in New York, but they wouldn't. My fiance is from Bakersfield, California. She doesn't want to be close to LA and doesn't want to go back there, but she lived in New York, and I could see us doing that.
Why did you pick LA instead of New York though?
I think at the time I knew more people that lived there. More of my like close comedy friends had moved there. It's where I think at the time I was pretty convinced I wanted to like write for TV, and that seemed like the place to do that. It's also closer to my family, so if I needed to go back, it was easier. All the road work I had for the most part was on the majority of this half of the country, and then some in the South really wasn't in the Northeast. So, which it still kind of isn't. So I think me being able to not have to get a day job and move somewhere, it made more sense to be able to still work on the road.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you ever like regret that aspect though? Like just because New York is so rich in terms of the comedy scene there?
Sometimes I don't know if I wish that I moved there instead. I just still really would like to spend more time there for sure. I think the general attitude of it is more my pace than Los Angeles, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of a more New York now. That's not true, but
just the mentality about stand-up, though.
Yeah, definitely the mentality about I think that I'm big on balance. I think that's huge. I think it makes you a better comic if you're balanced in your life. And it's really hard to be balanced in Los Angeles because everybody's doing the same thing. But in New York, there's just so much different stuff going on and different types of people that are just living normal lives. I think it would be easier for me to be balanced in New York.
Yeah. Well, how have you been like navigating that with, like, how much are you touring? Like, shit's been crazy for you the past year. What does it look like now?
It's getting closer to normal. It really went in waves. So I didn't travel during COVID. I was being a good girl and stayed for about 9 months. I did some stuff in like Oregon and stuff, but I didn't fly.
You were doing Zoom stuff though, right?
Did a lot of Zoom stuff, a lot of online YouTube, whatever. Really focused on the YouTube, honestly, like kind of picked YouTube as the platform to focus on. And, which worked out much better than I anticipated and really kind of kept us alive during that time.
Yeah.
But so about March, because things here in Washington opened back up legally in February of like 25% capacity or whatever. In like March, I was booked again and then decided to fly starting in April. And at first it was really busy, actually, like good and back to kind of where I was, I guess. But I think not everybody was traveling yet. So that worked. And then it kind of slowed down. I mean, not enough to be like concerned about it, but it's just more local stuff. And I think more people were kind of getting back to working again. And so then it just saturates the whole situation.
Booking situation. Yeah. And then everybody's trying to get work too because they haven't been.
Yeah, definitely.
Where's the majority of your work?
I mean, the West Coast, for the most part. I mean, I'm back booked in like Oklahoma City, Denver, some Idaho stuff. I mean, now, but right before COVID, I was really reaching out and getting ready to do some Northeast stuff, some Midwest stuff that I had done before, but it just had been a while. And then I've literally had the same club had to cancel 3 times in Minneapolis, which I love them, and I'll be there eventually. I promise.
I grew up there. What club is it?
The Comedy Corner Underground.
Oh, they burned down.
Yeah, exactly. It was like every time. Well, and then so COVID, reschedule, fire. Then I'm supposed to be the weekend they reopen last weekend. Oh shit! And the bar's not done. So then they have to reschedule me again, which we haven't even done yet. But so it's like I keep getting right that, it was just odd timing as far as like really wanting to value myself more and say, trust me, I'm going to give you a good show. I should be headlining most places, whatever. And actually ask for that, which is a huge thing for me because I don't do that. I should, but I don't. And then all this happened where it's like, well, now everyone had to take a step back kind of to where you were. Everybody who did theaters was now in the clubs because theaters weren't open. So you have Brian Regan at the Comedy Attic or whatever when you're like, he should be, and now everybody's shifting back one, so we're still trying to sort that back out, I feel like. But for the most part, like I'm busy. It's just kind of weird shows or like, it's not all it doesn't feel as stable still as it did before.
The term like doing the road gets thrown around a lot. And because I haven't done a lot of road stuff, like what does that look like for you? Is it like a couple days you're home and then going places, and what are the types of venues? Are they clubs? Are they like one nighters? Like what is that for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of all those things really. Before, I had maybe settled down as a person a little bit and I was traveling constantly. It was pretty much like I'd be gone for like 2 weeks at a time and not come back at all. And then be home for like 3 days and then do it again. Sometimes a month, like really longer, but I was, there wasn't anything. It was lonely for sure.
Oh,
but
it sounds like, because there's so much dead space in there, right?
Well, and then you're in, Tulsa or Wichita or whatever. It's not like I'm in LA or New York or Denver or something, whatever, somewhere where it's like, oh, I'm going to hang out in this cool city for a long time. Not that I love Wichita, but there's just less to do.
What are you doing to fill your days there?
Walking around. I'll go to, I try to find different restaurants and stuff. And like, I'm big on whatever the food thing is they're like known for there, trying that. But yeah, that takes up a day, so it's, now I try to work out more, and then, whatever project I'm working on, sometimes it's a blessing in that it's like, well, yeah, I don't have anything else to do, so I better write,
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets real boring sometimes. But now it's more of I actually try to book myself in this area one weekend, away the next, and like opposites, so that I can be home for a full week instead of coming home for 2 days and then flying again, which was happening like a lot for a while. And it's just tiring. And
so you get more balance.
Yeah. And I think it makes me better physically to be able to deliver a good show if I'm not insanely tired or just like don't really care.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful for my career, let alone, balancing
what
life.
Like, was there a specific thing though that like happened where you're like, fuck, I need to get that balance? Or was it COVID, like putting that in perspective for you, or what?
I think, I had, I would say that it was, getting in a relationship and being kind of more like part of a family and having, I feel like tied down is not the correct word, but you know what I mean? Like something that you actually care
settled.
about. Yeah, settled. But even before that, I had kind of had ideas of being like, I just want to travel differently or smarter, or, I want to make more money. But yeah, so there was kind of already the idea of like trying to do it in a different way, or I liked that pattern anyways of being able to kind of, at least, because there was years where I didn't have a weekend off, like I just was working all the time. And so then you just, physically, I would get sick when I travel for like 2 weeks at a time. If I came back, I was almost always just getting a cold or something right after.
A lot of like hotels
and now
public transportation type areas.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
and now we're so like more conscious of germs and stuff, but I was not, not, whatever, normal, wash my hands and stuff. But now it's like, yeah, I was around so many different, I don't know what they're doing, like I'm just getting, So very often I would get sick for a couple of days after coming back from the road and then have to do it again, I worked sick a lot.
Yeah.
Which
were you,
wouldn't do now.
Like, I've heard the road can be detrimental at times where like, you're not, what are the pros and the cons of doing the road as a comic? Like, because you get more time to work things out, but like, do you think it lends itself to being like, to falling into bad habits? I
have heard, or I've seen people, and I say this, like when you come back from being on the road, you'll say that they have road on them. Like you can smell the road on you.
Yeah.
When you're on stage, but I don't feel like I ever maybe fell into that, but I don't know. It's just basically because road rooms are dirtier. They're, we live in the Seattle area. It's very liberal, progressive, PC kind of place. But when you're on the road, you can get away with more. And so sometimes guys will come back and you'll be like, "Ooh, why would you do that joke here?" But
it's
you're
just
just
tone deaf.
Yeah,
type.
exactly. You're just used to whatever, being in Wichita or wherever. I will say, and I didn't necessarily buy into it because people would always say this, but I think it made me a lot funnier to do the road. I think it just tests you in so many different ways, and also you're actually playing to people that you don't know. You're different types of people that are doing different stuff. If you just stay in one area, whether it's Seattle or Denver or Los Angeles, you're just playing to one type of person. And so it starts to expand your ability to write for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I really do think it made me funnier.
You think
I don't think
differently
you have
about your
to
material.
do it. Yeah. I don't think you have to do it to get funny, I just think I progressed pretty like efficiently because I did a lot of road work, and it was a lot of work, and it was lonely and boring and weird at times. But I feel like now I can perform anywhere and it'd be fine, you know.
How did you get into it? Because you sort of cut your teeth in Seattle, right? This is where you started.
Yeah.
And like, how did you progress to getting to that point where you were like working on the road like that?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't really know. I think and my biggest advice to younger comics is always to just be professional and be nice, because you never know who can help you or is, you know, later going to be more famous than you or whatever. Use people is what I'm saying. No, it just started off, I was just doing, you know, the open mics, and then you start getting booked on showcases and stuff around here. And then I would end up working with some of the headliners that are here. And do you want to come with me to Oregon and do some stuff? Do you want to come to Montana? Do you want to? Yeah, I do. You know, and then you just started saying yes to those things, even if it was at the beginning, you know, just doing a guest set or something. Then, started kind of featuring pretty consistently with some of the road guys from here. And then just decided that I could do a tour kind of on my own. I mean, that was probably, I think I was like 4 years in, or maybe 5 years. And me and Mike left and did a tour, a 3-month tour that was like the whole country except for the Northeast.
What, were you guys in like a van or something, or what?
Kia Soul. Edith.
Were you, wait, her name was Edith?
Yeah, her name's Edith.
That's great. Were you doing hotels? Were you sleeping in the fucking Soul?
I mean, no, we didn't sleep in the car. I don't think ever, but I think we only stayed at like 3 hotels in the 3 months. And we just stayed at other comics' houses, people like our family members that we knew on the road, you know, where if they lived in other places. I mean, it really was a learning experience as far as having to figure out how to pretty much break even, or, you know, I made some money. Mike likes fast food more than I do. So that was a problem for him. But, I think like the way I book stuff now, my ability to just go and do shows and make it work, I think came from that. And there's such naivety is the biggest like asset when you first start stand up, because there's so many things that hypothetically you shouldn't do that you do anyways. And you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. But that actually helped a lot, you know? And I think that was one of those things. Not that we shouldn't, stand up wise, we were great, but nobody fucking knew who we were, you know? So we had to go, we couldn't put our own shows on. So we had to find these like one-nighter rooms that we could convince them through other people or whatever. It took me a long time to book that tour, but met a ton of people, and just, you know, and we're doing some side room at a bar in Memphis for $60 on a Friday, you know, and just hoping for the best. But it was like, it was so fun. I would like, even probably poorly planned, I would do it again, you know, like I think I book things and am not afraid to go and do a lot of stuff because we did that. So
how did you even get the ball rolling on a lot of that shit? Because
it was originally supposed to be 3 of us. And then I don't even remember why Mitch decided not to go with us. And I don't even know. I asked, it's pretty common that people have done it. I know it's more common now that people are like, oh, just book my own stuff. But there was people who just did the road all the time and knew these random rooms. And so I would reach out to them, a couple of kind of local guys or whatever that had done it, and just say, do you know anybody in this area? How did you do this? You know, whatever. Spreadsheets. You message. Did they say anything? No, yes. And check in. Dates, you know, and then I had a map up like all the time trying to figure out what the smartest, you know, like we'll be in this area and during this time. So, cause we kind of went over like Spokane, Idaho, Montana, down Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, then across the bottom, like through Texas, and then Georgia, Florida, like just stuff like that. And then Tennessee, and then came back through the bottom all the way to San Diego, well, at Phoenix and then San Diego, and then went up the West Coast back.
Yeah.
And Portland the night before. And then we got back here. So it was, I mean, and hypothetically, you're like, yeah, there was much better ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But we did it, and it was fun. And yeah, I mean, I know people in Cincinnati and the most random Pensacola, you know, like just the most random places, Kingsport, Tennessee, that I would have never gone to on purpose, you know, before. And now it's actually proven pretty helpful now booking stuff, you know.
For sure. And were you like, how far along? You were 4 years in, so like how much time did you have built up to do that? Like real time.
Yeah, I think for the most part we would both do 30, you know. But yeah, I wouldn't say at that point I was like, yeah, I could do. I mean, I had done 45, but it was one of those other things that you're like, you shouldn't have said yes to that. But you did it anyways, you know, just to see. And I always tell people that. Like, if somebody wants to give you 45 minutes and pay you, just do it. You'll be fine. Just do it. And Mike and I joke about it because his first feature weekend was at Joker's, and he just said yes, you know, and he was probably like 2 years in. Mm-hmm. And he had 15 minutes. And so he was doing 30, and he wrote his set list. And then for the other 15, he just wrote crowd work for 15 minutes. Like, he wrote it down. But you just make it work, and you learn, and I don't know if it's as possible now as it was then, you know, because that would have been like 6 years ago. But just see what happens. I think we get really caught up on being like, what if I'm wrong? What if this doesn't work out? And it's like, who fucking cares? Then do something else. You know, like, just keep trying stuff and seeing what happens. And then for the most part, it won't work. And everyone says that about LA. They're like, oh, you come to LA and then you collect no's. You gotta collect your no's because you're gonna get 9 before you get the 10th yes. And so it's the same with everything else, though. Just try and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work the first time, so just keep trying shit.
It at least sound more fun too, though. Like, if you're gonna collect no's, you may as well do it with friends and have a good time with it. Like,
yeah.
That, I mean, there's just, I guess it leans into this thing, like, there is a lot of negativity in this, whatever you want to call, realm or space or whatever. Yeah. And for me, like, it's a lot better when I'm around people that aren't that way. Cause I mean, you're going to get shit on, you're going to have bad experiences, and you're going to hear those no's, and being around people that like don't let that weigh them down helps a lot.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of people that like use that as an excuse to just be bitter all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's fucking exhausting.
Well, like, it is. And then you can just, like, their energy in general is shifted at all times. And you're like, you're bringing everybody else down with your negativity here.
It doesn't help the weather here, and like just fucking.
Well, and everybody complains about that, which is funny because that became very apparent to me that I need the weather like this to kind of function properly. And people do that all the time where they're like, well, I got to get out of here. I got to go someplace sunny so that I'm happy. And I'm like, that's not the reason you're not. If that's the final thing that's going to keep you from being depressed, is the weather, then you really need to look at what else is going on. Because you can go and be depressed in the sun if you'd like to, but it's not going to. It's
a really sad thing to be depressed in the sun. Like, you just like, you're really fucking depressed if you are.
That's what LA is like. No, but that was a huge, like, I just didn't really work very efficiently there. And the sun, because I am from here, it always feels like vacation. So there's a little less sense of urgency, a little bit, I think.
Amy Miller, she was on, she told me, she's like, it's easy to just spend a year in LA not doing anything.
Oh yeah.
Like,
it's so easy to not do anything there.
I don't think that's like, I think that you need some kind of like uncomfortability or like friction or like, I think this area is, with the exception of like the 2-3 months in the summertime, like, it's a good creative space.
Yeah, absolutely. People get confused by that, but I have, like, when it's raining, that's like my favorite. I just feel different. Like, this time of year always feels like the reset for me. It's not, New Year's Eve or whatever. Like, it's always kind of when school starts. Like, I feel this okay,
2
summer's
weeks
done.
We have a fall before it just shifts aggressively.
Yeah. And then I'm like, this, we're starting, I guess refocus is like the fall for me. And it's because it shifts, the weather shifts.
Yeah.
Which never changes in LA. So there's no shift. There's no restart of anything. There's no winter,
Vegas is that way
too.
Vegas is the weirdest fucking weather. Like, it starts getting to be where like you walk outside and just one cloud today, maybe like just some kind of weather. It's fucking it. And I can't handle that shit. Like I can deal with
dirty
this,
too, like the air just is dirty.
And when it's really hot, it's like it feels like you're actually in an oven.
There's nowhere to go. Yeah. I just feel, I think you're right. And there's a lot of like, authors and stuff that like to be here and right here because and similarly with like London, they're pretty, kind of the same weather. It gets colder there, but there's something about like being inside when it's shitty outside and it's just like this creative, I don't know.
It makes you think differently. I don't know, collect your thoughts more.
And I don't know if that's true for everyone, but that's just, maybe the sunny LA coffee shop is best for you, but it did not work well for me.
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't fucking want to do that at all.
I wish more things were made here. And it was just seen as a place because it's got the audience for art in the Washington area. And, I have a little bit of a vendetta of like proving that. I think that more stuff should be made here. We have weird like filming permit laws and stuff that kind of screw things up, but they used to start plays, like touring plays here all the time. Like
really?
It's just a good like music scene. It's a good
People
art
took
scene.
the monorail.
Yeah, then you take the monorail and you can go see a show. But yeah, I mean, there's huge, like the ballet and stuff is huge here. So it's odd to me sometimes that people are like, "Oh, Seattle, is there a comedy scene there?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's like a big one."
And
like
the level. I mean, when you go outside of here to somewhere else, you see how spoiled like we are in that.
Oh yeah,
people fucking support the. I mean, we have audiences at open mic.
Yeah,
it's so,
and they've been so good lately, and I'm afraid to scare them, of being, because I think people had been pent up, like we want to go and see stuff, and I'm like, yes, like it just really fun audiences with sold out shows, and I'm like, keep doing that, keep doing it, keep supporting it, because they deserve to have really good shows, and we have. But I think we've been told for a long time that they're like, oh, Seattle, yeah, it's just kind of a stepping stone, or it's like, do you want to be an artist in that area? And it's like, no, this is like where artists are from, like this is like where the most tortured, stereotypical artist, Kurt Cobain type of people are from here. And for some reason, people are like, I don't know. I'm like, no, they are.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. Speaking of that, I forgot to mention at the start of this, Flying Boots has an open mic at 7 o'clock on Thursdays, run by my friend Stephen Baz. Stephen is running this room. If anybody wants to come check out live open mic, it's a great room to do that. Also, Tony V's every Monday night, hosted by me and Quinn Fitzgerald.
Nice.
But back to what you were saying.
Support the arts. Friends.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to plug it. Did you do 80 for 80 here?
I did.
Okay.
Which is so funny because I lived in LA at the time. And everything I've really made that's good and actually was made, I made here, And so I think maybe that's where it all came from. Like everything shifted for me. I really like unscripted stuff. I mean, I think we're all on a documentary kick right now, but I love that.
So what was the concept for people that aren't familiar?
So 80 for 80, which you can find it on YouTube too, is I interview people over the age of 80, just kind of about what they think about normal stuff, whatever, because my theory is we don't know what we're doing. Our parents sugarcoat it because they want us to do the best that we can, even though they kind of know more. But once you get over, I think probably 70, but over 80, they just don't give a shit anymore, and they're so candid, and they just say whatever they want, and it really, I mean, it was fun, and we kind of asked silly questions and stuff sometimes, but the comedy comes from them. I mean, it was such an interesting experience, and so each episode's like 5 to 10 minutes. It's not
watched
very long.
some of a couple of them.
Yeah,
it seemed like I like the history aspect of it, and I personally just think Seattle history in general is really interesting.
Yeah,
it's such a weird way that this everything started out here, so I found that to be super interesting.
Yeah, I did. I mean, so I had pitched it to a friend of mine who did some other videos and stuff for me, and he suggested getting a grant. And so I applied for the grant, not thinking that we would get it, because he had applied with them multiple times and didn't get it. And then kind of just kept it in the back pocket, like, if it comes up, then this would be a thing. And we ended up getting the grant. I actually got 2 of them from the same company, which is great. They're called For Culture here in Seattle, and they use the tourism taxes to fund arts projects, which I think is pretty cool. But part of the deal with them was like it needed to be about the area and stuff like that, which I think is cool. And that was fine. And I have this fantasy of doing it in other cities and kind of being able to compare some of the stories and stuff. And
a travel network type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really fun. And my first real experience of like producing, creating, having this idea and actually having it be a thing eventually.
How was that compared to stand-up? Because it is like just doing this and all the other stuff I do, like it's such a different set of hats that you're wearing. Yeah.
And that was so weird, especially I got really lucky with my crew and the people that I worked with. So that was helpful because they had more experience with some of the parts of it than I did and really didn't take advantage of me. You know what I mean? So I learned a lot in that aspect, but the hardest part is that there is not funny all the time. Like stand up, you're like going for laughs. This is it. And so I like the like story and the heartfelt part broken up by comedy. Like I love that, but actually executing it was kind of weird,
It's hard too.
Yeah. Some of those are like, there's cute moments in that project and you're like, just let it happen. Don't be weird, don't fuck it up. And so we had to do a live event to fulfill part of the grant. And so we did a premiere of it where I'm from in Renton. And that was the hardest part because I just kind of announced it and went out and was like, thank you, thanking people and stuff. And I felt so uncomfortable because it was like, they're not laughing, they weren't supposed to be, but still you're like, feels weird. And then you like make a joke because it just makes you feel better.
But it is like stand up though, where like, if it's quiet, that's not a bad thing.
That's
necessarily.
True. Yeah. They weren't
It's
yelling.
just like your ear has to be trained differently.
Yeah.
But people that make movies, can you imagine that? Like,
you just don't even know.
3 to 5 years working on something, and then all the payoff is like you're sitting in the room watching them watch something.
That was weird. I remember watching because we just showed one episode and then like the behind the scenes at the premiere part. Watching them watch it is really weird because you're like, ooh. But then hearing them actually enjoy it and laugh at it and stuff is really cool. But that's the thing, like with stand up, it's a slow burn. You can go to an open mic, you can try it. You have an idea.
So visceral too.
Right.
Like it's just right now.
Yeah. And then you can fix it if you need to, that kind of thing. There, it's like we spent all this time and money making this. And then you give it to them and you go, I fucking hope so, because I can't change it now. No. And I don't know what... if you're going to like it or not. I hope you do. And when they do, it's probably more of a, there's a high on stage of being like, oh, they like it. It's probably more of a high because it is a longer build up to be like, oh, thank God. Yeah. They really liked it. That's good. But I also don't really feel much relief when I finish projects. I should, and I need to work on that. But that like makes me think of the next thing right away instead of being like, we did it. You made a thing. This is exciting. Which my editor actually was really good at that. And he's like, isn't this so cool? We talked about this a year ago and now it's a thing. And I'm like, you're right. I should think about that.
Oh, it's weird how that works. I'm just somebody that like the momentum is what I like,
Well, and they say, vacations, like you actually get the most endorphins and stuff from planning it, not actually being on it. And
Really?
and I feel like that is kind of like that, where you're like, oh, I'm doing the thing and I don't know how it's going to go and stuff. But then, the nerves for me really come closer to the end of it.
Yeah, because then you're like, well, what's next?
Right, exactly. Yeah, which is kind of how I feel right now, a little bit. I mean, I'm working on stuff, but there's not enough to be like, I can show you something soon, you know?
Well, you're doing Dumb Pitches, which is your podcast, and it's like the concept was you're talking to people about shows and ideas they pitched.
It's anything. Yeah. It's just, we talk to successful people about their worst ideas.
Okay.
So some of it, has been like scripts and, jokes or whatever, but a lot of it's like inventions and business plans. And then some just like personal stories where they're like, it was a bad idea to be in this relationship for 15 years, So it's really fun and short. I wanted to keep it like half an hour ish, just for like that commute type of podcast listener, and wanted honestly, it started because, like I said, we focused on YouTube, got it to a monetized place, but even that doesn't really mean much. I think people don't know a lot of that stuff. Like Spotify doesn't pay us pretty much at all for stuff, that's just kind of the deal. And so I wanted for the video, like I wanted it to just be like a video interview thing for YouTube so I could keep, more watch time and whatnot. And then I had done something for Helium last year and they were like, we're starting a podcast network. Can we have the audio? And I was like, sure, you can. So I don't actually do the audio part of it. They put it up on, Apple and Spotify and stuff, but it worked out because I have it anyways, so.
Has that like actually resulted in like a pretty big like audience for you?
It's actually better than I thought. It's not anything like huge, and I think just kind of the audience we cultivated from YouTube on its own is more substantial than I think sometimes. So they're pretty great about it and pretty dedicated and stuff. I think because I've only been maybe like 7 months or something been doing it, and so just now we're starting to get some people that just stumble upon, just find it or whatever. And then, I mean, that's the whole point of having a podcast or anything else. It's like, well, then you can find the other things, If I do stand up, then I say, oh, I have this podcast and stuff. You can go check that out. If you're on the podcast, then you go, oh, she does stand up too. Let me go check that out. It's just to diversify what people can see. I mean, obviously I enjoy making all the different stuff, but that's kind of the point, is that they see you on stage and like, I really like Adam, I'm going to look him up. And then it's like, oh, he has a podcast. Well, I'm going to listen to the podcast, so.
Some of them have been very bad, by the way. Like, it's not, I mean, I started this shit. I didn't really know. All I knew is I wanted to like keep working at stuff and get better.
Yeah.
And I felt like this helped me in that. And I know that it has, because I was so fucking, I mean, I can hear it in any of my earlier episodes where I'm just so like fucking nervous. Like, I don't like attention. I don't like it's a
weird thing to do though.
I was like, oh, this will be a good way to spotlight other people and hear their stories and shit. And then I don't know what I was very bad at planning this in hindsight, but it's been fun.
I think in reality, those are the things that are the most rewarding, or are because there is less of a pressure. Like if you built it up too much and you're like, this is exactly what it's going to be. Like at least you kind of let it become its own thing.
Yeah.
But when you are really rigid, then you're like, well, this sucked.
Well, that's why I didn't want to go the route of like, I got some stuff on YouTube, but like, I don't want to be a TikTok star.
Yeah.
Like I don't, because I make fun of TikToks. Like it's there's
very
some
meta
balance.
if you're on TikTok making fun of TikTok.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
It's not a good look, but there's some like stuff where I'm just like, yeah, no, that's not. I want that creative flexibility, and maybe that means it's not as marketable, but
it's a weird spot right now. I think everyone is still like, it's still shifting and changing because it has become so dependent on whatever
your
social
niche.
media. Yeah. Whatever it is. And so even like, I mean, my goal, maybe similarly your goal is I love stand up. That's what I love. And so everything else is just to trickle down into stand up and for people to come and see me and be able to go to a club and have people show up to see me. I think clubs are in whatever venues in general are in a weird spot right now where everything has changed. So it's like, if you are on a TV show, it might not mean as much as someone who has 1 million TikTok followers as far as getting butts in seats.
It's so crazy.
And it's just weird. It's still changing and I don't know where it's going to go. Like, I don't know where what's next.
Well, I think that's just a different fan relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if people are constantly taking your content in, like the listeners of this show, they have a different relationship with you, and versus like, oh, I just like that character on the show. And also,
which isn't you.
It's not you. And then also those people can be pieces of shit. Like, they're not always like, at least you kind of get a feel for like what someone genuinely is like.
Yeah. So you know they're a piece of shit. Or
yeah.
not.
And I mean, it's kind of hard to hide over hours and hours of stuff.
Which is that the podcast fan probably changed the landscape more than anything else leading up to this, because it wasn't a thing for a long time. And then it was. And those fans are they know you. You're right. Like they hear exactly what you're actually thinking or going through or whatever on a weekly basis. And so when I've just seen, some of these bigger podcasts, the guys that host them or women that host them, and then they are almost like emotional in the way that they, like podcast fans come up afterwards. They want to talk to them no matter what. They're going to buy all the merch. They're going to, it's just more of a dedicated fan than pretty much anything else that I know of, I think people try to do it with music or feel, you feel connected to that person because they wrote the song, hopefully, but half the time they didn't write the song, whatever. But with podcasts, it's like, no, that's exactly. So if you feel connected to that host or or the guest, whatever.
I'm still at the point where I'm afraid of anybody that comes up to me with this stuff.
They're like, I listen to the podcast.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. And like, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm just a defensive person.
Well, which is so interesting because I think for the most part, the people who, and this is just in my experience, and I don't have like a huge fan base. So, the select few who are very dedicated and excited, I'm more excited to see them, honestly, because I'm like, you were so helpful during this, because we did like all these live streams and stuff. And like a lot of the same people would show up and be helpful, and I feel like I know them, and then they're coming to see me again. It's almost like, like a friend came to see your show finally, Well, and then that's the thing, over social media or over your podcast or whatever, I just want them to come and see me live. And I like, my whole thing is like, I'm so glad you like this right now, but it's even better if you see it in real life.
For sure.
So then when they finally get to see it, I'm like, right, it's better, right? I'm glad you finally got to be here and be in real life and stuff. And for the most part, they're really nice people that seems to follow me. So that's nice. But
what freaks me out a little bit though is like when you start being honest on places like this, people know a lot about you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't know what I've said over the course of like this much time, but like, I feel like you know so much about me,
and I forgot.
And I have no idea anything about, and I like, it's the same thing when you do like, when you perform in front of strangers and then people come up to you after the show, like complete strangers.
Or they like call back your jokes or something. You're like, why do you know that about me? Like,
oh yeah. Scares the shit out of you.
Listen to me
like,
talk for 30 minutes. Yeah.
Like, because I had this joke about long story short, like people saying that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people around me will say that phrase still. I'm like, are you fucking with me? Or like
my dad will like, just in conversation when we're on vacation or something, he'll like bring up a joke and be like,
yeah.
Like, thanks.
And you're like,
but appreciate it. Thanks for paying attention.
This feels
buddy.
like more for you than for me
exactly.
in this moment. All right. Well, before we go into the Storytime section, just if you are watching on YouTube, since we're talking about the benefits of YouTube, any comments and questions for Monica, throw them in there.
Thank you.
Also submit on our YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed the episode so far, you can also click the notification button. I'm still learning some of this, so it's I'm bad at it right now, but there's a notification bell that you can click and it will tell you when new content comes out. Do that. It helps us with the algorithm and more people can see the show. But let's go into our story time section with a little music.
It's story time. It's story time with Adam. Yeah, it's story time. It's story time with Adam and friends.
It's pretty good,
That's
right?
beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every
Who
time
is
I...
that? Is that you?
God damn it. My producer's going to kill me. He will put it in the show notes. I know that. He can't.
Oh, sorry.
But some of the guys are under like some contract stuff that I don't want to screw up.
Got it.
Sorry, Henry. So I asked you
it's okay.
any of the three questions, like good stories from the road, worst show you've ever done, or hardest bomb you've ever had or seen.
Or seen. That's what I remember that you asked me that, and I'm like, I've seen some rough ones. Now, I think
longest is good too, like hardest and longest, because the length can be.
All right. Well, I'll tell you two stories about the same place actually. Casinos are pretty notoriously not fun to do unless you're doing the ballroom and it's your headlining show and you sold it out. Often casinos will do like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday show where the intention, I think, is for people to come and watch when they normally would leave so that they would gamble more later. So the venue's not really invested. The audience really isn't invested for the most part. Some casinos have good weekday shows, but they have, they care.
They just lost money.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
They're in a bad mood.
They would just want to smoke indoors. And why are you talking? There's this place. I probably shouldn't say where it is. I don't know. Just a casino, but it's like pretty far out on the peninsula of Washington. And the first time I do it, it's like a clean room too, which is always so confusing because I'm like, dude, people are doing all of their vices at once right now. And you're like, don't swear though.
Yeah, don't say.
All right. And this was actually a pretty okay crowd. But what would happen was there's like two tiers in the audience, and it's a huge stage. It's like meant for a full rock band, and it's like 10 feet off the ground. And so they're down there, but then there's another like tier of seating up. Nobody would sit down here. They would only sit back there. And I finally was like, why is no one sitting down here? And they're like, we can't smoke down there. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, we can only smoke cigarettes back here and not down there. So people are just smoking cigarettes, watching you, lighting matches while you're on stage, and no one is right in front of you. So you can't really hear them. So it feels like I'm not doing very well, which was actually, there was like quite a few people there now that I've worked there a few times. Mm-hmm. But I used to do a joke about having to get photos for like skin cancer. Like I had skin cancer. And so people you have to get grid photos, which is like your naked body. Like that's just to see if anything changes. And so I'm like telling the joke and I turn around always. And I, didn't really think about it. Just had turned around basically. And then a little bit later in the show, I was like, I used to wear colored pants a lot, which I still love colored pants. I just don't have as many anymore. And at the time I was single. So I was like, I'm going to die alone, probably wearing these pants. And this woman in the audience goes, well, at least they're new. And I was like, how do you know that? Like I was so confused why she would know that. And I was like, I mean, they look nice. And I was like, why do you know that? She's like, there's stickers still on the back. I was like, why didn't you say anything? Like, why didn't anybody say anything? I
was like down the side
of the thigh one. Yeah, it's like all the way down the back of my leg. And I was so embarrassed, but then just kept being like, you guys are not friends. Why did no one tell me that? Like, and nobody.
Were you embarrassed? Like, did it throw you off? Or, okay, you thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny. Well, I have a photo with the couple that told me, with me like holding the sticker because we thought it was so funny. so I had like, it was a silly experience, but a kind of a fun one, especially in a road room. And I was a little bit younger. I had been doing the road, but not quite as much in those rooms. You'd still get nervous at that time. Now I'm like, whatever. But so that was the first experience I had in that room. The next time I'm there are 2 people in the audience and all the way in the back like that, like nobody's sitting up front, just 2 dudes smoking cigarettes, and there's no noise at all. I mean, it's not even like there's bombing when people don't like you, but then there's just like talking into a void basically. And like the staff every once in a while be like, "You're doing great." And it's like, "Am I? What are you talking about?
Who is this for?"
And I'm like, "Why are we doing, why do I have to do this?" Like most clubs are like, if there's less than 10 people, we're not going to do the show.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Which is so funny because I've been at a club where there was only 8 and we were like, okay, so that means we're not doing it. And the producer was like, "I bought the last 2 tickets so that we can do the show." I'm like, "Why do you want to do this? What is wrong with you?" It's in a room that fits like 150 and you're like, 8 people? Cool. That'll be great.
And they feel uncomfortable.
Silent. Yes. And then you can't, like, even the most veteran person, you can't not acknowledge it. I mean, it's just weird to just be like, "I'm just going to tell you my jokes and hope for the best," and like just keep talking. So at some point you have to acknowledge what's going on and just be like, "This is weird." And like there's no,
if you don't, that's like you're operating on a weird frequency, right?
It's you just talking into the mirror at that point or whatever,
And
like
some people like that actually. There's a certain comic out there that it's like, "Oh, this is for me." Like there's more of me.
That's true. But yeah, and then, you get your $20 food voucher and have to drive back because I didn't get a hotel that night. Like just, oh man. And that's pretty normal with casinos. I worked at another casino the week after somebody had tried to fight the comic on stage. And I was like, this casino wasn't like this before. Like, what's going on? And at the time, it was like during COVID. Everything closed at 10 except for the casino. They could stay open. So everyone would come from every other bar in the area
just
to
hammered.
the casino, hammered, continue to get hammered, and then sit in the showroom. I mean, they were just hanging out. Like, I legitimately didn't do any material, the late show for that one, because it was like somebody's birthday party and they did, it was like heaven and hell themed, which is hilarious because that was like very popular in the early 2000s. Yeah. And just talked the whole time to them because it's not your show at that point, it's like, yeah, it is your birthday show. I guess we'll just see what you're up to.
Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool. It's funny because you're like, "Oh, road stories." And I'm like, a lot of them sound the same, like this happens.
Have you ever seen anybody get like hit on stage?
No. Have you?
I've
seen the videos of it.
I almost got hit, but it was,
really?
It was so crazy actually. What was the name of the spot it's right near Pike Place. Blarney Stone Pub.
Oh, okay.
There's this weird stage there where it's kind of by the door, but it's like the bar split. So like you're either in the bar or you're in the pool table room and the stage cuts it. And there's a wall that separates the two. So like you have to either decide if you're performing for the people at the bar or at the pool table. And this guy just fucking, as soon as we started going up there, it was like, we're doing comedy now. And what's the word?
Like, no.
He was fucked up. Like he was so hammered, and he was like 5'3", and which was funny. Like seeing how angry he was getting.
You're like, calm down, little guy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure that helps.
So I'm like watching it happen, and Andy Awancio goes up and like she starts saying some stuff and he just starts yelling slurs at her.
Oh my God.
And I saw it. I'm friends with her, and I was like, okay, this is in the back of my mind. And I go up and immediately go at him. Like, I'm like, if you're going to go at another comic and do it in that way, I'm not going to hold back against you, because you're making this whole thing about you. And granted, we showed up and like ruined his game of pool, but he got so pissed at me. I think I called him a smurf or something, like, and he was freaking out or whatever. And he got up in my face, and he was like closer from me to you. I mean, just right there. Everybody thought, you know, we were going to fight. And then before anything happened, the bartender just like flies out of nowhere, grabs him. He was wearing a backpack. And I remember I was like, you look adorable right now. You're wearing a backpack. And that was one of the things that really set him off. She grabbed him by the loop of the backpack, and there's a railing there. He almost took the whole railing out, and she fucking threw him out of the bar. It was amazing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but that was the closest I've ever seen.
I had people get in a fight in the audience while I was on stage. Not like, you know.
What did you do?
Well, I just watched. It was interesting. It was, again, I was still living here so I was probably like 3 years in. And I think it was one of the first times I'd ever closed a show. It was like 20 minutes, you know, but still. And a lot of the people on the show were headliners. Like, it was just a lot. It was a Wednesday on Capitol Hill. They used to have it. It was a good show. But this guy had come in apparently, and I didn't know any of this, but he had come in and asked for time. And they were like, oh, do you know anybody? Like, you know, and he's like, no, I didn't think he'd ever done stand-up. Like, he was just there to try. And they were like, oh, well, we have an open mic. You know, you can come to that one, but this is a book show and nobody knows who you are. And every comic before me, he's just like talking shit to just like, I'm funnier than you, blah, blah, blah. Which is funny because there's like 5 comics before me and they all like, he's still there. You know, nobody kicks him out or anything. And then by the time I'm on stage, like we go back and forth a little bit, but then he just starts like talking to the audience. Like he's not talking to me anymore and just like talking shit. And they hate him. Like the audience is really annoyed by him at this point.
Which is kind of a great feeling.
It was funny. Yeah. Cause I'm like, you're not, you know, it was pretty obvious he wasn't like doing well in whatever his
capacity was.
Heckling vendetta was, but he, and I just hear this woman yell, dude, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to punch you in the dick. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he said something, and it wasn't to her, but he said something out loud. And this guy across the room gets up and he goes, dude, it's not your show. Shut the fuck up. And what was described to me by that man afterwards, he was like, he just gave me this look. I was like, what? And apparently he just like smiled at him and in a like, I'm not intimidated by you type of way. And that dude just took off across the room for him. And I'm on stage just the mic is at my side at this point, just watching this show.
Yeah, you're just an audience member at this point.
It was so weird. And then the bartender like slid in between them and like kicked that, of course, just kicked that guy out. Didn't kick the other guy out, which I thought was pretty funny. But, and then the worst part of it was like, it was really weird and I was shaken up and like, I hadn't at that point even really dealt with crowd work and hecklers type of stuff much at all.
Yeah.
And so just that was weird enough, let alone that these dudes were like fighting in the middle of the audience. And so the producers felt bad about it and just didn't like me. So they were just like, oh, we just thought we'd give you more time because that happened. And I was like, no, I was ready to get off stage,
get me out of this
like
situation.
What the fuck? And I felt like I got off stage early because I was just like, I don't know, I'm just sorry, gotta go, you know, kind of thing. But it was supposed to do 20 and did like 27 or something. And it was just like, why didn't you? You thought that was the option to be like, oh, just let her go.
Help her out.
I mean, I was doing fine and I kind of kept joking about it, you know, and they were enjoying it, but it was just like, I was like really kind of shaken up, I guess. Cause it's just a weird thing. I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's fucking weird.
And if like you have seen videos and stuff, not that I thought this dude was going to come up and punch me, but it's just a volatile person in general being in a show. It's not really the energy you're going for. And yeah, I've seen some, I think everybody's a little nervous about it.
There's so much like, I mean, when I went to the Comedy Store a couple of years ago, it was just like, wow, like there is so much, like there are times where the comic is walking in the hallways with audience members and like with the amount of things that we say and the right crazy person that's angry, like I'm surprised more terrible shit hasn't happened, because
Yeah.
it's just like you just have no idea what people's intentions are.
For sure. And or what has triggered them, or what, you know what I mean? Like,
It
you don't
doesn't
even know.
They could just be mentally ill.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah, why are you here? I don't know. I think some people do go in, maybe not with the intention, but they're at least drunk enough to be like, I'm going to say something. And you're like, oh God, this is great. But I know, because we've all seen it, and I think for guys, maybe when I'm on stage, I feel safe. Afterwards, I do not. For you guys, you probably feel less safe on stage because some dude might just try to hit you. Afterwards, you're fine. I was working with Nick Swartzen. Amazing. So great. And he was on stage, and it was a low stage at a club. And for some fucking reason, it was a new server, and he hopped up on the stage and ran behind him to like get to the kitchen instead of going around. And Nick was like, what the fuck was that? He was like, oh my God. He was like, what was that? And then they're like, just one of the servers ran across the stage. He's like, I thought somebody was trying to attack me. Like, what the hell? And he was really like upset about it. But he's like, I've seen that though. Like, I've seen people.
oh yeah. Have you seen the thing that happened at Parlor with Bert Kreischer?
No.
There's like, this was, I don't know, it was right before the Parlor closed, but Bert's on stage with his shirt off, and literally just out of nowhere, some guy walks across like just right in front of him, and right as he's about to get there, security grabs the guy and pulls him off, and you look at, like, it happened so fast, and Bert's like, what the, like, he just,
I mean, that would be, because even, I mean, you work some places where you're like, security is good here, and they actually do like talk to people or just stand behind them intimidatingly until they stop.
3 seconds.
Oh yeah,
all it takes is them
they had
losing
really
their...
good security there, which I actually did appreciate. But there's still like, it's still a room full of chairs and stuff. Like, there's a factor of getting there, you know, at some point. So being there at the right time where you're like, there's still enough time where I could get attacked without being saved, you know. And then I work places where they don't have fucking security, and I'm like, you guys could take over if you wanted to, but
it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Of
like,
course.
this was a lot of fun. Is there anything you want to plug, just like, so people, if they like this episode, they want to check out your stuff?
Yeah. Everything is my name. So Monica Nevi, if you want to follow me on all the social media, or my website's just monicanevi.com. It's got live dates on there where you can come and see me do stand up. My YouTube is probably my thing that I trying to push people towards. There's lots of stand up clips, lots of other sketches, dumb pitches once a week. And then we have YouTube memberships, which, you know, it's a monthly fee, but you get full stand-up sets. I have a couple that are 50 minutes and 40 minutes on there. So if you live in the middle of nowhere and maybe can't see live stand-up, there you go. It's pretty much like being at a show. And then, you know, behind the scenes from dumb pitches and stuff. Worth it. And yeah, I feel like that's it. I have 2 albums that are out. Check those out.
Mostly Finger Guns, and then the meditation one.
That's called Chill.
Okay.
Yeah, which are both on, you can buy them from me, which is the best way to go, or Apple and Spotify and all that. They have all those, as well as the podcasts, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. Check out her stuff. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share this podcast with a friend and to rate and subscribe to us. If you're watching on YouTube, also make sure to select the notifications bell, like I said, so you don't miss any of our new content. And finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FNFpod for any additional content we have. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype